really there's a fundamental layer that, where we haven't quite cracked the code of, which is how do you get people when they're in a mindset where they don't necessarily want to do the behavioral change. Like you can tell people, we tried look how hard we had to work to get people to stop smoking, right?
But it
like
worked.
Smoking was it worked, but it was like the amount of social and changes that had to happen in social perception, in marketing, in medical communication, in public health communication, that all had to come together over decades to get people to decide, okay, I'm not going to start smoking, right? And now we're in a state where, yeah, it worked, right? Like I heard that they're actually banning cigarettes in I think it was New Zealand, for the next generation. So there literally will be a time where there'll be like no cigarettes anymore. Like that's going to be coming up very soon. We have to take the exact same approach now to the health crisis. We have to get everybody on board, and we have to enact massive systems to pressure people to understand that, yeah, that Frappuccino with 60 grams of sugar, needs the big warning label, like
Yes.
This will kill you, like what we put on cigarettes.
Yeah.
And we need to create a social perception that is, because the marketing for those things is still like, here's a happy little treat, make yourself feel better. These are the things that are actually driving our society. So we can give right now, there's a group that we live in, a world we live in, where we work with people and we're motivated to change. And the people that we work with are motivated to change. But once we get outside of that bubble, behavior change becomes a completely different challenge. But I guess that's
I always, my take on this debate is, I think there's an important distinction between population health, where everything you just said totally applies. Smoking is a great example. You need major operations and major campaigns over decades to change the behavior of the entire population. But then there's also the individual, right? And as an individual, it's kind of crazy to say like, oh, look, I'm dying. You told me how to not die. It's not very hard, but I'm too dumb to follow your advice. It's like at some point there's something called evolution where you just say, well, dude, I can't. That's it. I'm maxed out. So, and I think that also works wonders, because there are also people on this distribution of people who are very motivated. Like my friend is a great example, because he saw his mom having serious problems with diabetes, and he was very scared. And he told me, Joe, I don't want to end up there. I'm actually really scared.
Yeah,
I told him what to do.
That's a model of behavioral change that I've studied a lot of behavioral change, and so I call that the pattern interrupt. Right? It's like there's something has to happen. You're going along your life. You're minding your own business. I'll give you the best example of this I have from my personal trainer. So when I was a personal trainer, people would come in, and so you got to remember who is the population I'm dealing with. Okay, I'm dealing with people who first came to a gym, signed up for a membership, right? So they had some skin in the game. Then they say, well, you know what? I'm going to pay extra to work with a professional to put me on a program. Okay. And I was that guy that would come in. And so I would see these people and I would give them the programs, and I would consult with them. And I took my job extremely seriously. I wanted to get these people as healthy as they could be. And sometimes people were already relatively healthy, and they just wanted to get the edge. And sometimes I had people who were in really bad shape and they were just trying to like get out of it. And I'll never forget, this one guy came in, and he might have been he's probably in his early 40s. And he had a very minor stroke. And he had 2 young children. This guy, when he came to that training program, he had a notebook. This was before cell phones. Every word that came out of my mouth, he wrote down. This was the most motivated individual I ever saw in my life that is a personal trainer. He was like, I am not going to die. I want to be here for my wife and family. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure that I live. So that pattern interrupt of that, it was a very minor stroke, barely like a blip, but it was medically able to be, he collapsed and he took to the hospital and was fine immediately, but that sort of scared him straight. You know what I mean? That he was highly motivated.
But I love this story. So I love the story, Elias, because it shows what I mean with what you said before, the population approach. That's fine, but we are not the president or whoever, the VP, the first lady, first gentleman.
Right.
We are not in charge of that stuff, and it's also like difficult. What we are in charge of is providing people with a clear, crystal clear analysis what's going on. Like, are you on the way down to die or not? And
Right.
if yes, what can you do to stop it? And in my experience, my friend is a great example. He had that scare, most of a more diffuse scare. He didn't want to end up like his mom, right? But he had all the data. He had a doctor, and he was not on track because the data didn't tell him enough, and the doctor didn't react to it. So when he met me, he was motivated, but he had no clue what to do. So I did two things, and I think that's also what resolution should do, and what we should all do with patients. You need to be crystal clear that if something is off, that if you don't do something about it, you're going to die. And people are not clear on that. They say like, ooh, it's like a little blood sugar here. Maybe you get diabetes. Like, no, let's be clear. You're going to die. That's very simple. Right. And a terrible long
well, that's like what they put on the Canadian cigarettes package, right? They said this will, they literally started putting signs on them that this will just kill you. And they started showing pictures of throat cancers and like tumors to get people to stop smoking. I mean, I'm coming back to that example, but I'm just saying you're right. Like we need to maybe even frame the conversation in a way that really is going to drive that behavior change. So maybe we have to be a little more stark in our language. Yeah.
Because it's true. You will die a slow and painful death where you will feel over a decade low energy, you will lose your social life and then slowly die. Like, do you want that? You can also just
and you want that even earlier than the norm, right? Because again, if you have an A1C of 6 in your 40s, you're probably not going to make it to 78 or 76. Exactly. You know, you're probably not even going to make it that far.
But do you think people tell people and they say, oh, it's orange. You don't have congrats, you don't have diabetes yet. That's the message. That's the wrong message. And so scare them a little bit, but not in an irrational way. Just tell them the truth. The truth is, if you continue on this path, you're going to die.